Andriy Shevchenko served as Ukrainian ambassador to Canada from 2015 to 2021. He's in Kyiv, Ukraine. Mr. Shevchenko, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I wonder, sir, in signing this decree, Vladimir Putin has ordered the Russian Defense Ministry to deploy what he's calling Russian peacekeeping troops into Donbass. Is Russia invading Ukraine?
It invaded Ukraine 8 years ago. But if we're speaking about this particular speech by President Putin, I would say it was 1 hour of historical garbage. Basically, it was a mix of rage, historical hallucinations, and anti-Western hysteria, trash designed to boost Putin's self-esteem and mobilize his domestic audience. But in terms of the actual impact, make no mistake, it is massive and it will be massive. I think we have arrived to the crucial moment. All the masks are down. Putin has said what he has always believed. He does not recognize Ukraine's sovereignty over its territory, and he will occupy as much land as he wants and as we let him to. Putin should be and he will be punished for this.
How do you think Mr. Zelensky and the rest of the Ukrainian government will react to this? I mean, recognizing the independence of breakaway republics and then occupying them with Russian military has to be an intense provocation.
Well, David, we are preparing for further invasion by Russia. They have placed 150,000 troops in combat formation along the border and the front line. In the last 3 days, they have been heavily shelling our troops and civilians. More than 100 rounds of ammunition, killing our military and civilians. And we also have been witnessing the Russians lying on industrial scale and producing false flag operation, trying to create a pretext for further invasion. So I think we're witnessing this final act of this farce, and we are preparing for further invasion.
We have a statement from Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, saying that, as Katie just reported, that President Biden will sign an executive order that will prohibit all new investment, trade, and financing by U.S. persons to, from, or in these breakaway republics. They are still holding back on the threat of large, widespread, coordinated sanctions against Russia, Russian oligarchs, and Russian interests abroad. I mean, what do you make of this response from the U.S. To this latest provocation?
We are satisfied to see a very quick reaction, and we expect much more reaction from our allies. It is absolutely the right moment to introduce more sanctions. Putin brags about his land grabs. He has challenged the borders and the international order in general, and he must be punished now. We are satisfied with the recent reaction of the European Union. Josep Borrell, EU's representative for foreign affairs, has announced that EU will activate the sanctions package. We will see how big it is. The same signal we are getting from Washington, D.C. and London, and we hope that Canada will do the same.
I know you described the speech Mr. Putin gave today in rather uncritical terms, or rather critical terms, excuse me. I wonder, was this a speech recognizing the independence of these regions, or was Vladimir Putin laying the foundation for war against your country?
Well, I think both. And make no mistake, it's not just about Ukraine. In his, let's say, frantic speech, Putin talks again and again about the West, the United States of America, and about NATO. This will affect everyone through cyber attacks, through military actions or propaganda wars. And look, Russia is your neighbor just like ours. So when you get news from Ukraine, you should think through about what we are all going to do when Russia claims your continental shelf in the Arctic or chooses Resolute Bay or Inuvik for its further land grabs. So we must stop this madness immediately. And David, I strongly believe that Canada is in a very good position to lead the free world in deterring Russia and supporting Ukraine. Just like you did when you sent Operation Unifier training mission to Ukraine, when you made decision to provide us with weapons, when you impose sanctions, we need that help.
What specific help would you like to see from Canada at this point, sir, and from the other Western allies more broadly?
Sanctions, weapons, and close defense cooperations. Those are exactly the things that Putin is so afraid of. And yes, I think we should target specifically those Russians who influence the decisions of the Russian government, and we need to make sure that the Russian oligarchs and the Russian governmental officials cannot freely spend their money in the West and just enjoy all the other benefits that they do. It is the crucial moment.
What exactly do you want to see Western nations do to the oligarchs? I mean, they're heavily involved in things like British soccer and other. I mean, what do you want to see in terms of action against these extremely wealthy Russians with close ties to the Kremlin?
Well, it's something which has been heavily debated over and discussed among the allies, our allies in the free world. So first, we need to make sure that we limit Russia's capabilities to access financial markets of the world. Second, we need to target specific sectors of the economy. And yes, when it comes to individuals, we need to make sure that we target those people who steal money from the Russian people and who have made fortunes and who are spending that money for their benefit and for sponsoring aggressions against the neighboring countries.
I just wonder, sir, like there has sort of been a divergence in the assessment of the threat at certain times, with the Western allies being far more pessimistic about the threat of an imminent invasion, and Ukraine saying, well, maybe not, because you sort of live with this conflict, as you said, for 8 years. What's the mood there tonight? How do you think people are feeling across Ukraine?
Well, it's an early morning here, and there are many lights in the windows. I think it's a restless time for many families. If you remember Game of Thrones and the Night Watch, you will imagine what we feel. We know that we stand on the wall, the winter is coming, and we are to defend the civilization from the evil. And look, we are in this war for 8 years. Many of us have lost our relatives and friends, including myself. However, all the people I know stay calm, focused. I am staying in Kyiv with my family, just like 4 million other civilians in this wonderful city. And if necessary, we will fight for every house and for every street. And there is one major thing which makes us strong today. We do believe that this time we're not alone in this fight and that our allies will be with us. All the people, all the governments that are concerned about the future, they should do the right thing today.
Okay, Mr. Shevchenko, I really appreciate your time tonight and good luck. Thank you so much for joining us. Russian President Vladimir Putin recognized the independence of 2 breakaway separatist regions in eastern Ukraine. Those 2 regions, which you can see to the right of the map, are Donetsk and Luhansk, and they're in the Donbass, where Russia has long backed separatist fighters. And in a speech to the nation, Putin promised friendship and cooperation, and also announced mutual aid to the 2 rebel-controlled regions, and he's even deploying Russian troops across the border to what he calls a peacekeeping mission. All right, Melanie Joly is the Canadian Minister of Foreign Affairs, and she joins me now for the Canadian reaction on this. Minister Joly, I'm wondering what you make of these moves by President Putin. I mean, does this qualify as a further invasion of Ukraine?
Well, of course, we're extremely concerned. Not only concerned, I would say that his speech and rhetoric, David, are troubling and alarming. And so this is clearly not the path of de-escalation. This is clearly not the path of dialogue and diplomacy. And we have said, along with our partners, with our allies, that this would be met with severe consequences.
So what are those consequences? We've seen news from the United States that President Biden will sign an executive order prohibiting trade and investment in these breakaway regions. What is Canada going to do?
We also said that there would be sanctions, and there will be sanctions for the recognition of these non-controlled regions. So this is important to note to all our viewers. It's not only sanctions for what President Putin announced today and the Duma voted on, but also it's different from the sanctions package and all the other measures we're looking at in terms of should there be a further invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Also, on your point regarding peacekeeping mission, well, this is clearly not a peacekeeping mission. We know that Russia has been searching, looking for a pretext to further invade. That's why I've mentioned many times that the threat was real and imminent. And, any form of peacekeeping operations in this world must be approved by the UN. And so this is, again, Russia going ahead with a very troubling narrative and rhetoric.
Okay, so I just want to get some clarity, if I can, Minister, on the severity of these sanctions. You've promised widespread, sweeping, coordinated sanctions with all of our allies should Mr. Putin invade. This is not enough to trigger that? I mean, it seems like the recognition and then occupation, essentially, with military forces of breakaway separatist regions would be an invasion, would it not? So what is the level of the sanction here?
So the recognition by the Duma, like I just mentioned, David, will be met with sanctions. And so we will have more sanctions announced soon. But again, we're ready with a very strong package of sanctions for further invasion of Ukraine, should it go ahead. I think there's still time for diplomacy, but of course the window is closing very fast. I've just had a conversation with Dmytro Kuleba, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, regarding the urgency of the situation. I just spoken also with my European counterpart, Joseph Borrell, as we are coordinating ourselves amongst allies. Okay,
so I just want to make sure I'm clear. Sanctions for the recognition, that is step one. New sanctions for the official recognition of the independence of these regions. But should Mr. Putin make good on the peacekeeping mission that he calls, does that trigger the larger, wider spread sanctions that you've been holding back as sort of the final straw?
Should there be a further invasion, we've said it, we would go ahead. And so that's the trigger point, and that's exactly what also the US, the UK, and also the EU, so the European Union, has said. And we would obviously work with our allies on this.
Okay, so any troops going into these regions, any troops going into these regions qualifies as invasion?
Should there be a further invasion of Ukraine, we would go ahead and do it. And so that's why it's really important that we work together with allies, and that's why that's how we can have the most impact. Because we know that there will be a cost on Russia, a cost on Putin's, oligarchs' friends, a cost on people around him. And that's what we need to do because this is going against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. It is going against any form of international rule-based order, any form of, the Minsk Agreement, the UN Charter, any form of diplomatic conversations and agreements, including also the Paris Charter. So it's against international law, but it is also a threat to, obviously, Ukraine's security, but Europe's security and also the world's security.
Minister, I'm not sure how much of Mr. Putin's speech you watched today, but I watched a fair bit of it, and he doesn't seem like a man who cares very much about any of those things, right? I mean, he gave a long view of Russian history that historians are already sort of discrediting, but he's going back all the way to 1917 and sort of claiming this sovereign right over the control of the entirety of Ukraine. I mean, given the actions today and given the content of that speech today, I mean, do you think there's any capacity right now to convince him not to take further aggressive actions against Ukraine and its territories?
Well, there's always a path for diplomacy. There is always one. But obviously, like I said, the window is closing. What the Putin speech today was extremely, extremely preoccupiing. The very rhetoric of not recognizing Ukraine as a country is alarming. And that's why we and the West have been really working on this for now several weeks. We've raised this issue and we've worked together. And I would say that even within NATO, within the alliance, coming back from the Munich Security Conference right now, well, we are more united than ever, and Ukraine can be can know that the West, Canada, and its allies are really standing shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine.
No, the West and the allies certainly seem united, but he certainly seems as determined as ever based on the actions today. So what will make him stop here? If the West is unable to rein in his territorial expansionism, I mean, where will this stop?
Well, I don't read Putin's mind, and I'm, definitely completely in disagreement with his rhetoric. But that's exactly why we, as a government, been there to support Ukraine with a $120 million loan, with a further loan of $500 million. That's why we sent lethal weapons also to Ukraine. That's why we've been coordinating to make sure that there are strong, severe sanctions. This must have a cost. And so that's why we've been really proactively working on this. And that's exactly why I've been making it my top priority as Minister of Foreign Affairs, because it clearly has an impact on how we will conduct the world affairs in the coming weeks and months, for sure.
Okay, Minister, just one last question before I let you go. The sanctions you say that will come in retaliation for the recognition of the independence of these regions, when will we see those details? When will it be spelled out to the Canadian public and to the people of Ukraine?
Very soon. So my team and I are on this as we speak, and we'll have more to announce very soon. But I wanted our viewers to know, just before even any form of declaration, through our conversation, David, that sanctions would be imposed in the very near future for this very decision that happened today.
Okay, Minister Joly, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.